All right, there we go. Everything's recording. All right, so the quick update for everyone. So Bergen, after our last get together, put together the last few pages. The Blazers page and the Cub Scouts page, I think, were the two that were still pending. I just pulled those down on my computer using Dropbox and then sent them up to the server. So everything on the live website should be up to date with what we have written. But it sounds like not all the links are working quite right. So we're going to start doing some debugging. So let's do this. I'll real quick just share my browser screen. And all right, so I can refresh this one, and everything looks just right. And then if I hit this link here, we're getting a 404 not found. So let's dig into that a little bit here. Oh, sorry, I lost my sharing screen. There you go. I'll just go share my whole screen real quick so I can jump between windows. Oh no, not that thing. Inception has commenced. All right, so I'll go to Dropbox, Troop 1343. So I'll just kind of keep my code. They're going to overlap so that it's easier to see things. Let's take a look here. So if we look at the index.html page, that's kind of our home page. We left everything off just pretty much where we left it last time. So we're loading in all these libraries, and we're loading in our main style sheet that does all the framework of styling for us from Foundation. And then we have this navigation section right here. So, Berg, here's your quiz question for the first quiz question for this week. When you click on this piece of HTML right here in your browser, where will it take you?
To the Blazers page.
Mm-hmm. And so over here, let me see if I can actually. No, I can't make that part bigger. That's too bad. But over here, you'll probably see. Oh, that's funny. So here we have the Blazers page, and yet when we clicked it in our browser, it didn't get there. So what might be different between when my browser right here, when I say go to this place, and I'm trying to get there, but it's trying to go to /blazers.html, and yet it's not finding this one. What might be the difference?
Instead of head, maybe say Blazers.
No. Cool. Right there.
The website HTML.
Almost. So the HTML right here, it's saying blazers.html, and it has a lowercase b, but your blazers.html file over here is spelled with a capital B. And so this is one of those things where the nature of computers is just that they are pretty simple and kind of dumb. And so so back over here, what's really happening inside my computer is when I click this link, my browser is going to go it's going to reach out into the internet, it's going to find the address for www.troop1343.com, and it's going to send a little message, and I'll actually show you what this little message looks like. It sends over a little piece of text that looks something like that. And before that, it sends along a few pieces of information. It'll say something like, "Oh, I'm looking for some some HTML text information, and by the way, I'm from this IP address," or whatever, right? It's going to have some extra information up here. But if we can ignore all that for the time being, and the main thing it's going to do here is it's just going to say, "Hey, can you give me the /index.html page?" Or once I've clicked on that link, my browser is going to reach back out and say, "Can you please give me the blazers.html page?" And when the web server gets this thing, it's going to look for a file called blazers.html, and even though there's another one with the exact same name and the only difference is a capital B, the web server won't try to guess. It'll just look for only that one file with that specific name, and if it doesn't find it, it'll just say, oh, no dice, no luck, no soup for you.
So, hey Mike, I missed where is it the uppercase B?
In the blazers.html.
Yeah, well, it's the way the file is named over here. So if
So
we
which
look at
one
that,
are you? Oh, the file itself is named capital.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so let me see. Can I make these guys bigger? I don't know how to make anything bigger in Mac. Sorry, I'm a terrible Mac person. Hopefully someone will comment on our video and be like, "Oh, you idiot! You just do this one thing and it makes it bigger." But I'm not that good at Macs. So anyway, right here, yeah, this Blazers HTML. We just named the file with a capital instead of a lowercase. So I'm actually just going to change that real quick here in my copy of the site. Same exact thing. All I'm doing is just renaming the file. And then I'm actually going to open up real quick. I'll just show you what it looks like when I deploy this thing. I just have a little shortcut for this. Show you guys what it looks like. So this is my little deploy command that I told my computer how to do. So I just basically say, hey, you have to use this special secret key that's only on my machine. And then take everything that's in the Dropbox Troop 1343 site folder and copy all of it, sync it all up to the resty.com server and put it all in this folder. And so my web server is set up. It lives on resty.com, and I've told it to look in this folder anytime someone is asking about troop1343.com. So that's all that looks like. And so when I run that, it just looks through all the folders, files, and stuff that I have in my folder on my computer, and just sends them all up to the server. So now if we come back over here, we click Blazers. All right, so we're good. The link works now. We can go back to.
Let me work on.
Hey, somehow it added a Blazers. Hey.
Yeah, and it looks like not all of these links up here are working. Let me try to. Well, let's actually look back over here in the code. Just open it back up. Here we go. Oh. All right, blazers.html. So if we look at the nav section right here, it looks like we changed in the little home.
Mikey, there should be another Blazers file that we need to work on. The one above it, the Blazer, yeah.
Oh yeah, this one?
Yeah, I need to delete out the other one.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think that actually that might be a Dropbox thing. I might have edited my copy, and so when it tried to sync down your copy, maybe that's a Dropbox thing. That'd be my guess. So let's actually just remove this one. We'll rename this one to just be blazers.html. And so this is, so now we can, well, let's just close that one, come back over here, and I'll say resync everything. You can see it found some differences in the blazers.html file, and it synced that. So now if we come back here and refresh, now it looks like we're back to having things. Not everything is quite right still.
The calendars is probably the same thing. It's an uppercase and lowercase issue. Oh.
It looks like both the link and the file name are both uppercase.
Okay.
So that one looks okay. So the only thing I'm thinking, let's jump back to video chat here for a second. So one thing that we definitely have an issue with right now is that because you've had to copy and paste that little nav bar into each of the different files, some of the files had Blazers with the capital B, and some of it have Blazers with lowercase b, and there's just a few inconsistencies between the different files. And that's just because when we copy things around, we tend to make changes to them, and we forget to make that same exact change in all of the files. So this might be a good time for us to start thinking about writing a little bit of code that kind of manages that part of our website for us. So we could work on that. We could try to write together just a really like a minimal piece of Ruby code that would just say, here's kind of the template of my site, and so the template would be like the main HTML and the nav bar and a few things like that, and then we would just make little smaller files for like the Blazers file would actually just contain just the part for the Blazers. It wouldn't contain the nav bar or the header, and that would allow us to then we write a little piece of Ruby code that would look at all those things, glue them all back together, and generate a bunch of complete HTML files, and that's what we would send up to the server. So that's one way to manage that kind of a process. So that's something that we could work on tonight. Or if you wanted to, we could go back and just look at all of these pages and see if we have any broken images or things like that. What do you think is most important to work on, Bergen?
Just do the Ruby.
Ruby? All right. You getting tired of HTML? You want to do something else?
Yeah, he's got the ADD like all of us, right? It's like
all right.
I think it makes sense to jump over to the writing that because we understand the process pages and make sure they understand that. Let's just understand how to write a piece of code so we don't have to do it manually.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, I'll share my screen again real quick here, and we're just gonna dive in here, and this will be a little bit fast. So this might be one of the videos that you guys will want to go back and watch a couple of times. But basically, what I'm going to do, actually, I can do this in my Finder. That way, it's easier to kind of see what I was doing. Finder. All right. So right now, our Troop 1343 site folder is it's the whole website just all in one folder. And what I'm thinking of doing is saying, let's organize it just a little bit more. So okay. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a folder, and this will be the folder that we're going to put like all the stuff that we want to have on our page, but it's not necessarily all glued together yet. And so this is going to be kind of the main content of our site. So let's call it content, something like that. The name doesn't actually matter, but we'll try to give it a name that kind of makes sense for what we're trying to do. Then inside of that folder, we're going to make a folder called Pages. And this is where we're going to put each one of our pages, like the blazers.html file. But we're going to put in just the part that's about the Blazers and not the part that's about which CSS to use and which JavaScript to use and what the nav bar looks like. We'll leave all that stuff out of this page, or of this folder, I should say. So then we're going to want one other folder over here now. And this folder is going to be called, let's see, the thing I want this folder to contain is once I've glued everything together, once everything's ready to actually put on the website, then this is the thing that I want, this is the place that I want to put all of that stuff that's gotten glued all together. So let's maybe just call it the built folder. So the idea is that we've glued everything together and it's all built now. So some of these files that are in here right now, so like these JPEG files and stuff, these won't need to get built. They're already stuck together. They're already a complete file. Our code won't actually change any of those things. So we're going to take all of those and just put them in that built folder already. And let's see, these guys. And along those same lines, our CSS, we're not really going to make our code do anything to our CSS, so we'll just put the CSS right in there. In our images folder, and our JS folder, JavaScript stuff. So all that's just going to go straight into the built folder because our code won't modify any of those pages. Oh, and also our calendar should go in that folder as well. Okay, so now all we're left with is all of our HTML. And we're going to now try to find a good way to organize this information. So over here in our content folder, pages, we don't need this foundation one anymore, right? Wasn't this just an example file?
Yeah, we don't need that.
Okay. Okay, we'll get rid of this one. Index, leaders, those should both definitely go into our pages folder. Let's see, we'll do basically all these HTML folders. We're just going to put them into content. And then inside of there, we'll take all of them. We're going to put them inside pages. So we haven't changed anything in the code yet. We're just reorganizing. And the only reason we're reorganizing is because it's going to be easier for us to think about what our website is made of. And the fact that we've put it kind of in an organization is also going to make it easier for us to write some code and glue it all back together for us. So then also let's do one other change here. So some of these files that have like two names in them, right now we have some uppercase and lowercase and things, so we're just going to make a convention that every time we have two words, all of our file names will always be lowercase, and whenever we have a space, we'll just replace it with an underscore. And just having like a general rule of thumb for this kind of stuff saves us a lot of time, so we don't have to try to think of names as we go. It's a little bit easier just to always follow one set of rules. It looks like we have a duplicate file here. There's a leaders and a letters.html, so I'll just remove this duplicate copy. And then we have a few more files that I think we were kind of using as examples early on in the project. So like this troop1343 .html and stuff. I don't think we actually need these anymore, right?
Correct.
So we get rid of all those. No going back. All right. So let's jump back. Now we've actually, everything's organized. Well, ish. Organized, more organized than it was. So now what we want to do is we want to say, for each one of these HTML files, we want to extract just the part that's specific to this page, and all the stuff that is general to all the pages, we want to share. So I think what we need to do is in the content folder, so let's actually look at it back in Finder one more time. So inside the pages is where we have the specific pages. Oh, at this level, just in the main content folder, we're going to make a new file, and we're going to call that file layout.html. And we're going to copy the index page into it, because we want all of this stuff the same, right? We want this, you know, the website HTML, the head, the body, the nav. All of this is the stuff that we want shared. And the only stuff that was really actually specific to the index page is just this part of the HTML. So we're going to just delete that. And we now just need a way to kind of leave ourselves a little hint about when I'm ready to glue a page, when I'm ready to take the specifics of the index page and glue it back into here, where should it go? We're just going to have to kind of remember that. So I'm going to just make up a little placeholder here, and we'll just call it page. So let's make sure all of our links here are right. So we have index.html. Now that we're sharing this thing across all of this, across all the pages, You might want to go ahead and take off this little active thing. Remember, that was the thing that changed the button from black background to blue background, so you knew that that's the page you were on. We might be able to move that back in later and make it do that again, but for now, I'm thinking that it's easier if we just don't worry about that. And then we also renamed this file to be boy_scouts leaders, and we made it lowercase calendar.html. I think that's good to go.
Hey, Mike, so on that Boy Scouts one, if you read across that after the .html, we have capital B, and then we have a lowercase s. Is that?
Yeah, so the content inside the tag, that's just the text that it's going to show for the link. In other words,
Up in the URL, is that where that will show?
it won't go into the URL, so this is actually just the text. And then really anything that we put inside of this A tag, so we, instead of putting the text Boy Scouts, we could just put an image there, and then clicking on that image would take us to boyscouts.html. And so the thing that determines the URL is this href right here. And so that's the only thing that determines the URL. What's inside of the A tag won't affect that. That's just what we are choosing to show to the person reading our page. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So, but yeah, it's probably a good idea for us to make it kind of, it looks like all these other ones are kind of title cased. Is that a thing? Am I remembering that from school? Title casing?
Yeah.
Bergen, do they teach you title casing in school?
What's that?
Like where you capitalize things differently if it's a title? I don't know. Maybe I'm just making this up. It's been too long since I was in school, I guess.
Wait till your kids get in grade school.
I'm so excited to work on science fair projects. All right, so now that we have this layout, layout, by the way, is kind of just a general term. You'll hear it a lot whenever people are talking about programming for the web. The idea of the layout is that it's kind of like the outline of your site, or it's the parts around the outside of the web page, and you put all the specific stuff on the inside specifically so that it's easier for you to share the layout between all your different pages. So, so now we need to just do the opposite thing to our specific pages. We need to get rid of the general stuff, right? So we're just going to be doing my favorite activity of programming, deleting the best. So get rid of all this stuff. Boy Scouts. Calendar. We do the index and then leaders. All right. So now we've separated our pages, the contents of each of our pages, from the layout. And one downside of this is that if we go back over to my browser and we ask it, hey, here is this Troop 1343 content layout page, and we open it, it's like not going to do anything, right? It just has this thing in there. Now you can't just like make a change and instantly refresh. So that's one drawback of this process. So we're going to need to go ahead and write some little code that glues everything back together. So I'm going to go back to the kind of the root of our project, and we're going to make a build.rb file. All right, so there is a lot to say about Ruby, and we definitely won't have time to talk about all of it. So I'll just kind of do the major steps that I'm thinking of right now off the top of my head, and then I'll kind of talk through why I'm doing each of these steps, what each of these things does for me, and definitely interrupt me, stop me whenever there's something, if I start using language that you guys aren't familiar with, just stop me, interrupt me, and we'll talk about it. But basically what I'm going to do is the first thing I need to know is where is this folder that I'm in right now? And I'm going to call it the root of my project. So Ruby has this this thing where you can say file underscore underscore file underscore underscore. And whenever a Ruby file runs and it sees this thing, it's going to replace it with the current file that was being run. Because maybe on my computer, this file lives in one folder, but on your computer, when it runs on your computer, it lives in a different folder. And so Ruby will figure out exactly where this folder lives on your computer at the time that it's running, and it'll stick it in there. And then I actually need to know not specifically the name of this file. I want to know what folder it's in. So I'm going to use this thing called dir name, which is like a directory name. And so this will just tell me where does this project live on the computer that it's on right now. So then the next thing I need to do is I need to know what list of pages exists for this project. And since we separated all of our pages into a special folder, then we can just ask it for all the HTML files in that folder. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say file.expand path. So I'm going to say I want to look in the root, but well, let's break this into steps actually. Sorry, I'm going too fast. I want to know where our pages folder is. So what I'm going to do is I say, I know that if I know where the root is, I know that it's inside of that thing, it's in a folder called content, and then inside of that folder, there's another folder called pages, right?
Yep.
And now I can use this magical little thing to say, I'm going to say look in that pages folder and look for anything. So star just means anything ending with .html. So find everything in this pages folder that ends in HTML, and then I'm going to call each, which lets me walk through that list. So it might find 8 things or 30 things or whatever. I don't know, and so it's just going to give me back a list. And then I'm going to say, okay, now I want to walk through that list one item at a time. Or in other words, I want to look at each item one at a time. So that's why we call it each right here. And now it's going to give it to me, and I have to tell it what I want to call that item in the list. So I'll call it current page. And so then what I want to do with this current page is I want to take it, and I want to take the layout, glue them together, and then go save them inside of that built directory, or that built folder that we made. Because that's the stuff that'll actually end up getting sent up to the server. So let's think. First, up here, I need to figure out where the layout lives, right? So let's say layout will read the file, and we need to tell it which file to read. And so again, we're going to use this expand path to say look in the root folder, but then look inside of content and look for the layout.html file. So it's going to read that in. And now this layout, so I've given it this name called layout. What that means is if I try to use layout right here, layout would actually contain a string that would say like website I forgot how that file begins, but anyway, it'd have
yeah, it's like exclamation point, I think website.html or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I forget exactly, but anyway, it would contain the contents of that file, so it's read all of that file in the same way that here, if I look at it in this program, it's showing it to me as a list of one character and another character and another character. Inside this little program, it will have pulled in that whole list of all those characters right here. Then what I need to do is I need to read in the page, this current page in the file. So our current page name right now, it has a value of something like, on my computer it has a value of something like users, HQMQ, Dropbox, Troop 1343, content, pages, leaders.html. So that's
Mike,
uh-huh.
where can we find that current page value that you just typed in?
So this current page value right here, if you highlight it, you can see we're defining it right here. So what we're asking Ruby to do is this little command right here, this dir command or directory command says find all the files that match this pattern. In this case, we've said look in the root of our project and this content pages thing, look for anything ending in .html. So that made a list, and that list contained a whole bunch of these types of values. So it was a whole bunch of files that exist on your computer, but it's just the names of the files. It's not their contents.
Okay, so I'm seeing on your screen you have a file like in your URL space that has your user /HQMQ/Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
So is that where we're going to be pulling? We just open the current page folder. I mean, to get that you just typed in, or how do we know what that is?
So once our program is complete, it will be writing out all of the copies of all the pages into the built folder. But every time you run it, it will like erase them and recreate all of the pages again. And so what you would do is when you want to edit one of those pages, you would go into content, pages, blazers.html, for instance, right? And so you would edit the file here, and then you would run the program, and it's going to end up getting created over in this other folder for you. But the code will do the gluing together for you. Does that make sense?
Okay. So we don't necessarily need to know that path that you just wrote out?
No, that path, and that's why we used a little bit of code to figure out where do we live on this computer that we're on, because on my computer it's going to be a different folder than your computer. And so,
and I won't worry about it.
Yeah. So when it's on your computer, it won't have the same value. That's just the value that I happen to know it has on my computer.
Okay.
So, but now we need to take this name of a file and we need to read in all the characters inside of it, all the information inside of it. So we're going to do that by saying page equals file.read current page. So that's the same thing we did up here. So up here we said find the layout file and read it. Here we just said, oh, take the current page, which it's giving it to us one at a time, keeps giving us one more page, and we're going to read that in. And now what we're going to do is say, let's call it the final page will be the layout, and then we're going to use this little command called sub, and we're going to say, look for that place where we left that little identifier. So in layout.html, remember we had we left this little thing right here, like, oh, this is where I need to put the HTML for each page.
Yeah.
So our code is going to just find that little thing, and it's going to replace it with the contents that we just read in from the page file.
So, Mike, the sub, is that fair to say it's like substitute that page placeholder for the page file that we just created?
Yep, that's exactly what it stands for, a substitute.
Okay.
So then what we're going to do is we need to now write this page out into a folder inside of the built directory, or the built folder. So let's say final page path. So usually when you're talking about the names of files in code, usually when we talk about it just as people who use computers, we'll use the term file name. But most programmers and programs will call that a path, because we'll actually be talking about here we're going to be telling it both the folder and the file name to use. And those two things put together usually are called a path. So I'm going to make this name here called final page path. And so what I'm going to do is now I have to figure out what do I name this thing. And in order to figure that out, I need to know the file name. So I can get that this little file thing that Ruby has can tell me the name, and for various historical reasons, they call it a base name instead of a file name. We can basically say, hey, take that current page and just give me the last part of it. So it has current page had all these like slash users, HQMQ, Dropbox, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then somewhere it ends with leaders.html. And base name just says, I only want this part right here. I just want the leaders.html off of that name. So I'm going to just take that only so that then I can turn around and say, we're going to use this expand path thing again to say, we want to look in the built folder, and inside of that built folder, so from the root of our project, go down one level into a folder called built, and then go down a second level and use the file name as the end of this path. And finally, we can say we're going to open that final page path, and we're going to be writing into it. And again, this is, we don't have to talk about all the details of exactly what's happening here. But basically, yeah?
Does file name need to be in quotations? Or is it okay not to be in that, final page path? The end, you're asking go to the root, and then go to built folder, and then look for file name. Does that need to be in quotes, or is it okay to be just as it is?
So we're going to leave it this way. So what would happen is if I said, if I put it in quotes,
yep,
then what will happen in the code is that it would say, okay, your root is something like users HQMQ. Yep. And then it's going to go inside of there and say, oh, look for a built folder. And then it would go inside of there and look, and it would just be called file name. But we don't want to just always use the name file name, because then all the pages would have the same name. So instead, we take it out of the quotes and we say, we don't, right here in this piece of code, I don't know what the name is, but right here I figured out what the name should be. And so I did that by asking for the last part of the name from this current page up here.
Okay, I got it.
And so we're leaving it as like a variable that the code will just replace each time through the loop with a different value.
Okay, so if we put it in quotes, it's not going to be a replaceable variable. It's just going to be solid. This is what I'm looking for.
Yep, it'll just always use exactly what's inside those quotes.
Got it.
So that's why we left like build and content and layout.html. Those are all in quotes because they never change. We always know it's going to be in a folder called content and a file name called layout.html. But we don't always know what these things are, because if later on if we wanted to add a new page for beehives, well, Bergen would never add beehives, but some other page, then this code will just automatically find that and just know to go build it. So.
Mom can do that.
Mom will do the beehives. All right. So then what we did here is we told our computer, I want to open up this path, which is all the folder names and the file name within that folder. Here's exactly where I want this file to live, and I want you to open it in a way that I can write new information into that file. And then that gave us back a little, I'll actually give this a better name. A lot of times programmers shorten names, but it's because we've already typed out this name 100 times, and so we forget that it's not obvious what FH means. So it's a file handle, and that just basically lets us start to write some data into that file. So not all these details have to make sense at this point, but this is just kind of a general little tool. So let's try to use it. Let's see if the thing that I just made works at all. Probably not. I'll give you a hint. Nothing ever works first time. All right. So expand path. So when I'm trying to call expand path here with like two or like three different things in it, with the root and then content and then pages, it's not liking that. So maybe what I need to do is change that to just be like that. Instead of passing like two separate things, I just am passing one.
Now this is looking familiar to me. This is like everything we used to do when we were emailing, right? We'd write, go to this folder / this folder /.
Yeah. And the only reason we don't always love to write in the slashes directly, the only reason for that is that if you tried to run this code on a Windows machine, Windows, instead of using forward slashes to separate folders, uses backslashes. And so it's like, it only is a problem on Windows. So in general, I try not to write the slashes myself, just because then if I try to run it on a Windows machine, it would not work. But that's a minor issue. We don't worry about that for now, because you guys have a Mac, and so do I. Okay, that ran, or rather, let me say, I ran it, so I said Ruby build.rb. So I asked the Ruby programming language to run this program for me, and it ran and didn't tell me anything. It didn't say, that was amazing, you built a website, but it also didn't say, something went horribly wrong. So let's just go look at our folder and see if we can figure out whether something went horribly wrong or not. So now in the built folder, we do have a blazers.html, and we have a boyscouts.html. Now, whether or not they are real pages and can be looked at is another thing. That looks right to me. This might have actually worked. This is really surprising, you guys, if this actually just worked. So let's try. So oh, that definitely isn't going to work anymore. I'll cancel that. I just realized of course, I'm going to have to change my little deploy script now, because I'm telling it to sync everything in the Troop 1343 site folder.
Yeah.
And that's not actually what I want to deploy anymore. What I want to deploy is just the built folder of that. Yep, just that built folder. But I don't have to actually change anything over here. Like my server, it doesn't actually care that we built the pages separately and then glued them together. It doesn't know. As far as it knows, it just has some HTML. So we don't actually have to change anything on that part of the command. So let's try one more time here. Okay, that says that it rewrote some things. And we'll come back over here. Let's refresh. Now we have an index page, and we can go to Blazers. And that worked. We can go to Boy Scouts. Oh, no dice. Let's see, what might have gone wrong?
Check the HTML page on Boy Scouts. There might be some.
I don't think we uncapitalized it.
Would that matter?
Oh,
I don't think we uncapitalized it.
let's see. Close all this stuff. We're not looking at built, we're just going to look at content. So the links to it, so I thought I had fixed the link here. Let me actually go check on the server here real quick. So there's a lot of stuff on here. I'm actually just going to say get rid of all of those things and redeploy from scratch.
Bergen doesn't like it's telling him F Bergen robot.
I think that just means I'm going to be adding a file, and if it's all pluses, it means it's all totally new copy. But if it was some pluses and minuses, it would mean that it's making some edits to the file to try to keep it in sync. But that's a good observation. We should probably have a different name or a different abbreviation for those, huh? At least it's not saying F Bergen. It's actually just talking about your robot. That's a little less offensive.
Robot was good.
Okay, this will go a little bit faster now. That MP4 was bigger than all these other files, so that took a little while to actually get everything synced up.
Oh my god.
Whoa, that stuff all went really fast. Okay. So let's refresh. Now,
Now it looks.
yeah, so now the Boy Scouts link looks correct. Leaders looks correct. Calendar. And now our navigation is the exact same on all the different pages. Oh, actually not totally. I think what's actually still happening is that my browser still has some of the files cached, yeah. So it had previously downloaded like the calendar page, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So it was still using the old copy. So like this one right here, you can see this button was still blue. So it's still using like the old copy of the page. If we ask it to inspect the element, we can actually look inside here and see that we still have this class active. But if I say Command-Shift-R, that tells you my browser, don't try to use any of the stuff you downloaded before. Go re-download everything. Then now it's back to being correct. So there's really good ways for us to actually avoid that problem in the future. So I will make some changes to the web server that tell it to be a little bit smarter about how it lets. It can basically, my web server can give some hints to your browser to say, these are the things that are safe for you to cache and just keep your own copy of, so you don't have to keep asking for them over and over. And these are the things that you shouldn't cache because they will probably be changing a lot. And so there's a way for my web server to send that information back to the browser, but probably not worth going into right now tonight. All right, so that was some Ruby. You guys are Rubyists now.
Yeah, Ruby. It seems very simple to do. Obviously, you rattle it off in 5 seconds because you understand that world, but from a high level, it looks like, okay, it's not that difficult. It's just saying, hey, check this path, or check this folder, look for that, and it's really not a bunch of gobbledygook. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to take repetition.
Yeah, writing Ruby code, writing C code, writing HTML, all of them, I think, have this common characteristic where the first time you do it, or the 5th time you do it, or the 20th time you do it, it looks like just like magic spells or something, right? It's like Wingardium Leviosa, and something happens.
Have you read those books?
Yeah, like 3 times.
I'm reading the 5th one right now again.
Oh no, now I'm going to have to go find my 5th book and read it again. Yeah, so it feels like it's magical and somehow like, oh, something's going on that I don't understand. And I think it's easy for our brains when that happens. It's easy for our brains just to say, oh, well, I don't get what's going on, and it just doesn't think about it. But there's always some, like, how I'd like to think of it is, if a computer can do this thing, then I can definitely do that thing. Because all a computer can actually do is an exact step that someone told it to do. That's all it can actually do. And so the fact that it can do video chat only exists because someone told it how to draw a color on a screen, and then they wrote so many of those types of commands that it can draw all the colors it needs to show me your face and show you my face. And so whenever something looks magical or like unintelligible, it just means that we need to go back and understand what those commands are. So the only other thing I was going to bring up tonight is, have you guys used codeschool.com at all?
Is that code.org?
We've done W3.
Okay. So let me just show you real quick. There is a pretty cool website. So there aren't very many websites that teach coding that I think are really cool. But this is one of them. So these people have put a lot of time and effort into making learning things like Ruby or JavaScript or HTML and CSS quite a bit easier. And so instead of just showing you a video and then saying good luck, or instead of just giving you like a whole bunch of text that you can read and then hopefully do something, they organize it into like bunches of different lessons, and each lesson is made up of like, oh, we're going to show you a couple of quick videos, and then we're going to give you a challenge, and you actually have to write some code on their website to complete that challenge. So it's a little bit more of a walkthrough. And so I was just going to try to get, in terms of what you want to do next, Bergen, what are you interested in building from here? Do you want to add something to this website? Do you want to make it a little bit fancier somehow? What are you thinking that you're interested in doing next?
Maybe make it a little bit nicer, or have it so that I can have my leader get on there and say what we're going to be doing for the week. People can check that. Instead of him having to send out like 10 million emails a week.
He sends out probably 5 to 10 emails a week, just like, hey, update here, parents. He's awesome. It's so cool, but it'd be nice to direct people to the site.
Yeah.
Calendar.
Now that actually really does sound like when you and I used to work on an email marketing, Matt, because sending out 10 million emails a week was kind of our thing.
That was our thing, for sure.
So we can definitely do that. So
I think that's spot on. What he's saying, we need to work on that justification on the left of that. Everything's like lined over as far as you can on the frame of the screen, so we need to move everything over so you can read it, and then you can beautify it, add some pictures, add something. But that schedule or the calendar piece would be nice to have a dynamic calendar in there that actually moved, and that he could put notes, and this is what we're doing this week and stuff like that. That would be awesome.
So kind of an easy first approximation or a first try at that kind of a thing would be I can write just a little script that will just resync whatever's in this Dropbox folder up to my website every hour. So once every hour, it's just going to check to see if anything's changed and pull it down. So I can do that, and then what you could do, Berg, is you could just go on that calendar.html page under Content Pages, calendar.html, and you can just edit whatever's there, and whenever you edit it within an hour, my website will come and pick it up and it'll update it. And so you can start pointing people to www.troop1343.com/calendar.html, and whatever you've put in there is what they'll see. So that might be a good first approximation.
Yeah.
And then from there we could maybe start to write some code so that instead of it just always being a static file that you're just updating Bergen, instead of that it could actually, each time someone tries to ask for that file, code on the server can actually generate a new copy every time, so that instead of you having to manually update, you could actually have like the page itself would know what day of the week it is, so it could like point to exactly where you are in the schedule or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's all stuff that we can do kind of down the future. The reason I brought up codeschool.com is that I think so I have my babies due in a week from this next Wednesday.
Oh yeah.
So my availability to be helping out every Wednesday night is probably going to be diminished to 0.
Yeah.
Because I won't be getting any sleep at night and those kinds of things, at least for a little while, a couple of weeks. So this is what I had thought of, Bergen, is that if you are up for it, I just published a course through Pluralsight, and Pluralsight just bought Code School. So I'm pretty sure I can get a free account for you, and if I can't get it for free, then I'll pay for it. And so I just wanted to sign you up for codeschool.com and cover the student cost, and then they have a really good HTML and CSS path, and that way for the couple of weeks that I'm out with baby duties, you can start editing that calendar.html file and changing it to be whatever you think it should be. And before the baby arrives, I'll try to get that script done so that my website will keep picking up your changes, and I'll try to fix the caching thing as well. And if I can get those fixed, then we should be able to, then you should be able to kind of keep that ball rolling and keep your learning going. And definitely send me emails if you have questions and things like that. But that way you can keep moving forward, and you don't get stuck waiting for me to get to the point where my baby is sleeping.
We appreciate it, Mike. It's been awesome. Hey, I have a quick question on the www. We need to add another record so that we could just type in Troop 1343.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you can't add CNAME records for the top level domain. That's why that one doesn't work right now.
Okay.
So let me look up this thing. I'll send you an email afterwards. You can just point it to the IP address. So root records or top level domain records, you can only point them to a specific IP address. You can't just say, oh, just redirect it always to this other address. So I'll send you the IP address of my server, and so you can point the root of it. It works a little bit better if you can use a CNAME, just because if Amazon ever needs to, if my server ever crashes and I have to start a new one, it gets a different IP. So if that happens, I'll just have to send you an email and have you update the IP address. But that's fine. It's not a big hassle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'd be cool. I just, we want to get it out there to people probably in the next month or so. And like me and you, we always just type in Troop 1433 or 1343. We're not going to go www.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's so 2005.
So true. So yeah, I'll send you, let's think. So my homework assignments are, I'm going to send you guys an email with the IP address to point troop1343.com to. And I'll try to figure out a little script that can talk to Dropbox and sync something down. And then also in my email, I'll send over, we'll have a username and password for Bergen to use to get to codeschool.com and start using that. And so I'll try to get that all to you by next Wednesday. And then your homework, Bergen, will be to get that calendar.html page just exactly the way you want it. And so it won't be doing all the fancy schmancy stuff of auto-updating itself every day and whatever quite yet, but you can go ahead and start making it just the way you want. And whenever you edit it, what you'll want to do is make some changes to your copy of that calendar.html page, run ruby build.rb, and that will glue it together with the layout, and then you can open up in your browser, you can open up calendar.html from the build directory, and that will be exactly the way it should show up on the website. So that should give you plenty of interesting things to learn and work on in the meantime.
Okay, so we'll update that file. We'll run ruby.rb from terminal, and then that'll be able to show up. What I think it'll do, Berg, is we'll take the emails that Jason's sending out, and you can just copy that text and put it in there for now. You know what I mean? We'll just create an area so that at least it gives us an idea of. You can update the calendar. We'll change out January and put in a February calendar, stuff like that.
Yeah, you guys will definitely want to check out. There's an HTML tag called paragraph, but they shorten it in HTML to just a P. So it's just a angle bracket T angle bracket, and that just makes a paragraph of text. So you should be able to just copy and paste the text straight over and put it inside of a P tag, and it will show up just like text on that page. So that would be a good first way to do that. And then as you get going on Code School, I'm sure you'll learn lots of other cool tricks of you can put it inside of pre-tags, and you can use classes to highlight things and all sorts of that stuff. So I'll leave that up to your imagination, because I'm sure you'll come up with something much awesomer than I would anyway.
I doubt it.
Since my first suggestion was beehives.html, obviously I'm unqualified for this project.
You're embarrassing him now.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much.
He has a question that you don't need to record this question, but he has a question for you.
Okay, I'll turn off the broadcast. We'll talk to you guys all later.